good life, good life. I'ma do me, I can't do it no different. Gold shades tinted, yeah, I got the right vision, yeah. I won't let you down, we about to paint the town. Got the people all around, we been surfing on the crown, yeah. We them cool kids with the roof down, yeah, we let loose, so lighten up, break the rules now. Yeah, we wild out the house with the tunes loud. On top of the clouds, looking round. Yo, how we ever getting down? Oh, I'm just going with the flow. Hey, you just gotta let me know. I think that it's about that time to go. One time for the gram, no. Go ahead, strike the pose. Got the city on lock. They ain't seen nothing like it. Got the whole spot popping. Ooh, it gets so exciting. Had the time of your life. Can I get that in writing? Ay, and tell them everybody invited. I'm having the time of my life. Everything is going alright. Ooh, I just made them look twice. This is how it feels when you living that good life. I'm just living that good life. I'm just living that good life. I'm just living that good life. Good life. It's not exaggerated, I just had to say it. Look how we graduated, I'm so glad you made it. Cause we got all that we wanted, couldn't hate if they wanted to. We living without a limit, yeah, we do what we wanna do. Now, throw your hands up one time. They think that we lost our minds. Well, maybe we did, maybe that's just how we live. Maybe that's all that we want, maybe it is what it is. Cause we're just living our life. That's a life we're living. We're just living our life. That's a life.
Piece of business keeping it here. What is up, guys? Welcome to Saturday, which means it is back squats, because the movements that I do on specific days don't really ever change. I normally always do deadlifts on Tuesday, always do SSB on Thursday, and back squats on Saturday. The only thing that might change is how much weight I have on the bar or how many reps or sets I'm doing. But this week we have changed the amount of weight on the bar because we've basically got to the end of the block, which means that I'm due a little bit of a deload, because if we were to continue going up in weights, there's a risk of obviously injury and just accumulated fatigue to the point where I could then get injured. So we've reset all of the weight on all of the different movements. So on Tuesday, instead of working up to what would be 250 kilos for a set of 5, which would be a PB, we've gone down to 220 kilos. So that was a really good session. It did feel light, but even though it is still quite heavy, but that's just a sort of testament to how my deadlift is feeling at the moment. On Thursday, worked up to 152.5 kilos for a set of 8 instead of what should have been 160 kilos if we'd continued pushing. And today, instead of doing 200 kilos, I'm going back down to 192.5 kilos for a set of 5. So all of it is just to make sure that I stay fresh and then progress again to the next block. So in 4 weeks time, the idea is that we'll be fresh enough to then go for another sort of 5 rep max or 8 rep max, that sort of thing. It's a good way of training. I really like the way the sort of program is set out. Although I'm always doing the same movements on the same days, that can get a little bit monotonous, but I'm really sort of happy with the way it's sort of set out in terms of the undulating periodization of it. I really enjoy that side of things. The other things that I obviously need to keep on top of is the prehab and the rehab, and that's kind of what I'm going to talk about in this video after this session. And I'm going to talk about the things that I'm really doing to try and basically stop myself getting injured, because the programming is one side of things that can sort of help you stop getting injured by allowing you to have those rests like I'm doing this week. But you need to be doing the things outside of the gym to stop you getting injured as well. So I'm going to go over some of the stuff that I do, especially for my pec at the moment, because that seems to be a troubled area at the moment. And I'll just discuss everything that I'm doing and go over a little bit of the anatomy of sort of my shoulder and what I think is the reason why I keep getting injured. So once I've squatted and maybe got in the ice bath today, I'll talk you through that.
so I'm going to be starting with bench today before I go into squats. I've just done my warm-ups, which I'll show you after the session, but feeling really good. My sort of scapula feels very engaged now, which is what I want. I feel like I've got a bit of external rotation in my shoulders, which is also what I want. So yeah, feeling good. Working up to 90 kilos, I think, for a set of 8, which is 5 kilos more than Tuesday. So fingers crossed, it all feels good. I mean, the pec feels fine at the moment. I've done my warm-up, so the rest is in the hands of the gods. Right, that's bench done, 90 kilos for 8, slowly getting back up to the sort of bigger numbers now. I was a little bit cautious in the last few reps, didn't feel anything, but I just know the last time I sort of got to the slightly heavier weights, it was those last couple of reps where I could start feeling it. But everything's moving really quick. I just need to stay on top of the rehab and trust the process really. But yeah, so that's sort of the first part of the session done. Moving on to squats now, working up to 192 kilos, so let's get it done. So that's squats done, 192.5 for 5. Felt really easy, to be fair. Didn't have to get sort of super hyped for it, and I think that's another thing. When we sort of bring the weights down again after each block, it gives my sort of mind a rest as well. I don't have to get sort of too hyped up, because that does take a lot of energy as well, and that can add to fatigue. So it's nice to sort of lift a little bit calmer as well. But yeah, that's that done. Just gonna do a little bit of accessories. I think I'm gonna do some pull-ups, that sort of thing. And then I'm going to try and get into the ice bath. It's time to get very wet and very cold. Let's have a quick look. Yep, a couple of leaves in there.
This is brutal. Oh, if only I'd known, I would have stopped him. Like, oh no, it's not got ages yet.
Alright, that was 2 minutes, 30 seconds more than last week. It is absolutely Baltic. I'll tell you what, that does not get any easier. Anytime you do it, you still have to have a little bit of grit to actually get yourself in there. And yeah, every second that goes by feels like a minute. It's absolutely horrible, but got it done. All right, let's get home, warm up, and then we can talk a little bit about rehab.
All right, nicely warmed up. Let's talk a little bit of rehab. More specifically, what I am doing for my shoulder and my pec to get my pec healthy, because I want to basically be able to bulletproof my body now, so I'm not getting injured anymore. So getting straight into it, first of all, you've got to think about exactly what is causing the issue, because if you don't sort of realise what the issue is, then you're just going to keep injuring it, and you're not going to be able to do treatments to actually help prevent it. So there's a little bit of clinical reasoning that goes into exactly what you think the issue might be, because it's never going to be 100% accurate, because there's lots of variables that it could be. But you've got to think about what you do outside of the gym. So I think about what I do for a living. So 70 to 80% of my job involves sitting down at a desk where I am now, or driving, which includes a lot of sort of internal rotation of my shoulders, and just posturally I'm in more of a kyphotic stance. So everything is just anteriorly in the transverse plane. So everything's sort of like in this motion. So what does this cause? Well, over time that can cause a lot of tightness in your internal rotators. So I'm just going to list off some of the internal rotators that your body has in the shoulder. So there is the subscapularis. That is probably one of the main internal rotators of the humerus, or the humeral joint at the top of your arm here, so that internally rotates your arm. The other ones would be the teres major, which is located just underneath the subscapularis. Then there's a little one called, I'm not going to get the name of this right, the coracobrachialis, which is a very small sort of muscle, which also helps with a little bit of internal rotation. And then you've got things like the pec major, which also contributes to internal rotation as well as other things. So those are the main sort of internal rotators, and you've got to think, if your posture is always in that sort of internally rotated kyphotic position, those muscles are going to be shortening, as well as getting really tight, which is just going to sort of exacerbate that posture even more. So then you've got to think about your external rotators. What are they doing? So your external rotators being your infraspinatus and your teres minor. So those are the ones that attach to the back of your humeral joint, which when contracted rotate your humerus outwards and externally rotate your arm. And as you'll see, there's less external rotators than there are internal rotators. And when you're sort of fixed in that position for over long periods of time, so like I say, 70 to 80% of my job is in this sort of position, those external rotators are going to lengthen, and when they lengthen, they also weaken, which tightens up the internal rotators and just exacerbates the whole problem. So that's kind of how I can clinically reason what's going on. But how does that sort of affect me bench pressing and that sort of thing? Well, if you can imagine, if I'm in this position all of the time and in a very sort of tight, kyphotic, internally rotated position, when it comes to bench pressing, you've got to then stretch those internal rotators and your pec in order to get into a good bench position. So over time, if you load that enough and you don't address the sort of dysfunction that you've got going on there, injuries will occur. And that is pretty much what has happened to me with my pec and my insertion there. They've got very sort of tight and bunged up, and when I've gone for some reps on the bench, it's basically caused a little bit of a tear. So how do I then sort of fix that? What do I need to do to prevent that from happening in the future? Well, the way that I'm sort of approaching it is really focusing on trying to then lengthen those internal rotators, or at least loosen them up, so they aren't sort of getting really tight and basically internally rotating my arm. So the first thing that I do is focus on my subscapularis, which is one of the main internal rotators of the arm. And the way I do that is threefold. So first of all I do is just massage it. So I'll really get in there. It's very painful, and just literally put loads of pressure on it until it feels like it's slightly releasing. So I'll do a little bit of internal, external rotation while I'm doing it. The other thing I can use is a lacrosse ball and get that right in there and do the exact same thing. But the other thing that I found really useful is getting a broom handle and pushing it in there and then resting on it as well. So that just sort of helps loosen that up a little bit. But that alone, palpation and a little bit of sort of passive movement, isn't going to do the job. That's not going to fix it. What I have to do is strengthen other areas, more specifically my external rotators. So I need to be able to get the muscles in my back, which are, or around my scapula, which externally rotate my arm. I need to get them stronger and basically get them firing, because they're just not working at the moment. And other muscles around the sort of shoulder girdle in my traps and everything like that, they're compensating, which isn't obviously a good thing, because then your scapula isn't very stable, and that's ultimately what you need when you're bench pressing. You need everything in that area to be stable. So how do I exercise those muscles? Well, every day at the moment I'm doing something called the lock big 3, which is basically lying on my front with my head touching the floor, completely relaxing all of my body. So I'm focusing purely on my scapula, and then first of all I'll get like 1 kilo dumbbells, and pronated I'll do 15 reps just pulsing my scapula up and down while lying on my front. Then I'll supinate my hands, so I'll have it
do the exact same thing, 15 reps, 15 to 20 reps doing that, and then I'll bring my hands right out, and then I'll be doing exactly the same thing for 15 to 20 reps. And what the last one does is kind of focuses a little bit on the rhomboids as well. So the rhomboids, the job of the rhomboids really is to retract the scapula as well, and also act as a stabilizer for the scapula as well. So if you can get them strengthened, that will help retract as well, and then that will help lengthen the pecs, which is ultimately what I need to do. So another exercise that I do to focus on the external rotators is getting a band and literally externally rotating my arm against the force of the band. And by doing that, I'm going to be working on my infraspinatus and my teres major, which are the external rotators, just basically strengthening them. So another exercise that I'm doing at the moment are hangs. So after each session, I will literally hang on a bar, and this allows my lats to get a little bit of a stretch as well, because the lats are a little bit of an internal rotator just by where they're located on the top of your humerus as well. When they sort of depress, that can cause a little bit of internal rotation as well. So loosening them up will help a little bit as well. So I give them a little bit of a stretch at the top of a hang as well. And then the last couple of things I will do are just things that, again, going to really focus on that external rotation and working on some of my back muscles as well, like my rhomboids, so doing face pulls and doing reverse flies. That sort of thing is going to really focus on that sort of posture and bringing everything that's sort of anterior out and stretched a little bit. So how often am I actually doing all of these exercises? I'm actually trying to aim to do them every single day, because if you can imagine that when I'm sitting at my desk, that is literally 70-80% of my whole day. So if I'm staying in this position for the whole time, that's going to just exacerbate this internally rotated position. So just going to the gym and doing these exercises once, doing a little bit of a massage once every couple of days just isn't enough. I really need to be doing it every single day to promote that functional movement of being able to get my arms externally rotated, really stretching out my chest, and just really improving the posture ultimately. Now then, talking of posture, one of the other things that I'm going to start trying to do, which I did do for a little bit but I didn't really get on with it, is use something called a bow tie. Now what this basically does is you put it over your back and it forces you into that externally rotated position, and it's very hard to then get into a more internally rotated position. So you can literally wear this all day while you're sat down in the office or driving or whatever it is, and it will just put you in better posture, which is going to lengthen those internal rotators and slightly shorten those external rotators, which is what ultimately you're after. So yeah, just to recap, what I'm going to be doing is the lock big three every single day. I'm going to try and finish off every single session by doing some sort of external rotation work, be that band pull apart, some reverse flies, some cable face pulls. So that's going to be focusing on strengthening the external rotators of my arm. I'm going to be working on things which are going to help stabilize my scapula, so working on rhomboids, so doing back wing rows, so holding the weight in a position which is really going to sort of activate my rhomboids. I'm going to be massaging my internal rotators, so my subscapularis, so I'm going to be putting a lacrosse ball in there and really trying to loosen that up a little bit. I'm going to be trying to wear the bow tie, and I think ultimately I'm just going to do more to try and be more active, so not sitting down on my desk all day. I'm going to be trying to take more regular breaks and get up and have a stretch and move around. But all of these things I'm going to try and do every single day, because I really want to try and bulletproof my sort of scapula, my pec, and everything in those sort of surrounding shoulder girdle area, because I really want this to be the last sort of pec injury I have, and I really want to start pushing on to some bigger numbers ultimately. So that is my plan going forward. That is how I'm going to hopefully bulletproof my body. So yeah, I thought I would just share that for anyone that is having similar issues with their bench and their pecs, because I have had a couple of people come up to me in the gym and mention that they're getting pec problems in the exact same location as me. So this is what I'm going to be doing going forward. So obviously I'm going to document this and show you that I'm going to be doing this every single day, and if it sort of helps, then that's like an anecdotal way of showing that this stuff works. So hopefully, like I say, I can stay injury free now if I can really focus on this and push on towards some bigger numbers. Anyway, sorry it was a little bit waffly. I'm sure I've probably forgotten something which I was meant to mention, but yeah, that's basically what I'm doing at the moment. So yeah, I'm pretty much going to sign out the video now, guys. Just wanted to have a little chat about sort of my rehab and what I'm doing outside of the gym. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I hope you found it useful as well if you're having similar problems. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave it a like if you have, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Peace.